Hi, everyone. Judge Frank Caprio. Welcome to the fourth edition of Court at Home in Providence. And I am welcoming you from my home in Providence. Now, we've all been through some trying times, and I know that many of you probably have endured some sickness and know relatives or friends who have had some problems. We'll get through it. As long as we all band together, never lose faith. Keep the faith, fight on, stay together, and everything will be just fine. So I want to thank all of you for your support. I am overwhelmed by the amount of support that you all have given me. And I received thousands of questions. So without wasting more time making speeches, why don't we get right to the questions? And the first question is from Susan Dennis from Phoenix, Arizona. And Susan wants to know, did any event or person from your childhood shape who you are today? Like many of you, the most influential person in my life that shaped my thoughts, my temperament, my person was my dad and my mom too, particularly my dad. You know, my dad was an immigrant. He came here from Italy. He was a young man. And his first job when he came to the United States, he peddled fruit from a pushcart. This is a picture of my dad. You can see that he has this. I'm blocking my face, I know, but I'd much rather have you look at my dad. But you can see him sitting on the pushcart with all of the fresh fruit. And that picture was taken in an area of Providence known as Federal Hill. Now, Federal Hill was then the Little Italy of Providence. It's where most of the Italians who emigrated from Italy settled on Federal Hill. And after he was a fruit peddler, he worked during the Depression for WPA, which was part of Roosevelt's New Deal. And then he got his big job. His big job was that he was a milkman. And perhaps you can see behind me, I have my dad's actual uniform that we had preserved forever so that it can go on for my children and my grandchildren and their grandchildren. I just wish that they all would remember this uniform of my father. It's a symbol of our heritage. It's a symbol of what he went through. It's a symbol of the hardship that he had to endure, and it's a symbol of so many immigrants, no matter what part of the world they came from, when they came to this country, seeking a better life, they had to struggle. There wasn't gold in the streets as many people thought. They struggled, and my father struggled hard. He had menial jobs, never made much money, but he gave us the love and the inspiration and the caring and understanding to go on, and encouragement, and listen to me, and constantly encourage me to go on. And it was because not only of his advice, but because of his example. His example. 4 o'clock in the morning, he'd have to get up every day. And they worked 7 days a week in those days, 7 days a week. Never complained. Never complained. His biggest joy in life was his family. And that's how I grew up. Closeness and love and appreciation of family and never ever giving up. And my parents sacrificed their lives for me and my brothers. And they are the people, particularly my dad, who influenced my decision. So that when people came before me, I always think of him. Many times I'll say to myself while I'm on the bench, I wonder what my dad would do. And I know what he would do. He'd dismiss everything. He'd take money out of his pocket and pay for it. But he was a pivotal character. So it helps to relate to the litigants when I think of my dad. Okay. It was actually, the more I think about it, it was his dedication and sacrifice and love of family and the love of humanity. I mentioned this in a previous set of letters, but I'll repeat it because it's very important. when I was a youngster, he said to me, "You're going to be a lawyer someday, but you can't charge poor people. You can't charge poor people." What kind of, I mean, imagine the advice, a young boy, and I'm saying, "Yes, Dad, yes, Dad." I never charged anyone. I think we need more parents to talk to their youngsters when they're small and give them a sense of direction, a sense of value, a sense of what's important, because we're all in this together. Okay. Next question is all the way from Monte Carlo, and it's from Riccardo Giannini. And he says, "You are very popular in Europe and have 4 billion views worldwide. Why do you think so many people of different cultures are interested in your courtroom in Providence, Rhode Island?" Well, I don't think it makes any difference where you come from in the world. Whether you come from Monte Carlo, you come from the United States, you come from Canada, you come from France, you come from Italy, you come from India, you come from China. People can identify. They can all identify. And basically, people all want to be treated fairly. I think fairly, I receive letters from all over the world, and almost every letter is the word fairly. People being treated fairly. And so I think the fact that I do make a concerted effort based on my upbringing to treat people with dignity. Everybody wants to be treated the same, with dignity, with respect, with understanding, with compassion. These are basic human qualities. You know, there's a big difference between the power of the sovereign and the power of the individual. And so I'm up there representing the sovereign. You know, I don't see myself being any better than the person who's before me. Many times I look at them, I see myself. And so I think it's because of the manner in which we treat people that they respect the court. Many of these people just made a minor mistake. Maybe it's a traffic violation. I mean, how excited can you get about a traffic violation? You know, but for them, it's a big deal. They've never been to court before, most of them, you know, and they're trembling because of the impression of being in a courtroom with a judge and a cop and guns and flags and oak-paneled courtroom. You know, it's a traumatic experience. So I try to make people feel comfortable. That's why I ask them questions about themselves, and I take into consideration their personal circumstances before I make a decision. And I think that's why Riccardo, incidentally, Riccardo, how's it going there in Monte Carlo? Stay away from the crap tables. Okay. Now I have an interesting question from Julie Cano from Melbourne, Australia, down under. So we got it from Monte Carlo and from Melbourne, Australia. And Julie is asking, would you consider running for president? I would love to run for president. I'd love to be president. But my time has passed. You know, what would you do? What would you do, Julie? Just think if you were president of Australia, right? So I think we all have our individual thoughts, the way we think government should run. I honestly think that everyone in public life is basically decent and honest and has good intentions. It's just that people don't agree with them. So on one side, you got half the people on one side think different than the other half of the people on this side. So, but I think that we should support people in government. I know there's a tendency to be real rough on someone if you don't agree with them, but I think we should support them and understand they have a real tough job to do. And regardless what your political affiliation is, you know, the one thing you have to remember to do is vote anyway to help the process. But the answer to your question is, I would love to be president, but I don't think it's my time. I think my time has passed. I got some great ideas. Now, see, Julie, you're from Melbourne, Australia. But if you were from the United States, I might say to you, Julie, you know, I'm going to make you my campaign manager. You know, why don't we have a meeting and see if we can have a platform? I'm only joking. Thanks for the question. We have a letter from Carlos Masri from Brazil. And the question is, do you have any plans on writing your autobiography? That's a great question. I've been asked several times to write an autobiography. And I really don't think anybody's interested in like what my life is. I mean, it's a very humbling experience for people to ask me to do an autobiography or even a biography. Because this basic premise is sort of like I am somebody very special, and I don't really believe that. I think I'm just like everybody else. Actually, I am. So I've toyed with the idea, and I think that if I were to do it, I probably would have to take a few months off and just be secluded for a while and get all of my thoughts together. I think it would be interesting, and maybe someday I'll do it, but right now I don't have any plans to do it. But thank you for asking the question. It's I take you asking the question as a great compliment. Although I really do think there are some things in my life that might help others if I could articulate them properly and correctly and authoritatively. Thank you. Susan Polson Servone from Fairborn, Ohio. What advice would you give disadvantaged people on how to make their future and their families' futures as successful as yours, coming from a poor immigrant family? Susan, I think if there's one piece of advice that I can give anyone, it's perseverance. Perseverance. Perseverance means don't quit. Don't ever, ever, ever quit. Now, you know, in the United States, I don't care who you are, unless you're a native-born American. I don't care who you are. I want everyone to remember that someone in your lineage came from another country. You may be third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation. Regardless of what you are, someone came from another country. So we're all immigrants in a way, by extension. I'm a first generation there because my dad was born in Italy. But we learned the lessons from those people who came from foreign countries, whether they were Italian or French or Great Britain or Indian or Chinese or Japanese, wherever they came from. They came to this country seeking a better life for their family. And it wasn't because there was gold in the streets. In order to have that better life, they sacrificed their lives. They sacrificed their lives for their future generations in their family. My parents sacrificed their lives for my brothers and I. Right? They deprived themselves all their life to give to us, as did everyone else in our neighborhood and every other generation that came here from wherever they came. And their dream was that life would be substantially better for their ancestors as it was for them. And in large part, they succeed. And you know what's going on in the world today, you know, particularly with the coronavirus, more than ever, we have to have perseverance, the lessons that were taught to us by our forebears. So I think that's the one piece of advice that I would give to people who, now I'm not sure what you mean by disadvantaged. If you mean, you know, first generation or people who are experiencing financial hardship, don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. But there's something else beside that. There's a second part to this equation, right? It is not enough to be successful. It is not enough to climb the ladder of success. Because after you climb the ladder of success, you are obligated to leave the ladder down so that others can follow. Right? You can't be a success and then shut everybody else off and say, oh, I made it, good, I made it, now everybody else, they're on their own. No, that's not the way it works. Right? So remember that. Climb the ladder of success and then leave it down so others can follow. And what I mean by that is you help other people. You know, sometimes it's only putting your hand on somebody's shoulder and giving them some advice. Sometimes it's just letting people know that you care. It's letting them know that you care, you know? So, you know, we all have we all have an obligation to our fellow human being here. And someday we're going to be judged on whether or not we met those obligations. And when we're judged, we're going to be judged not by how much we made, but by how much we care. Not by the dreams we made come true for ourselves, but by the dreams we made come true for others. We're going to be judged by the difference that we make in the lives that we touch and the hope that we inspire in the hopeless. That's what America is all about. Thank you, Susan, for your question. Okay, now we have a question from San Marino, California, from Natalie Kelso. And Natalie wants to know, do you have any pets? Natalie, I love pets. I've had dogs all my life. And unfortunately now, for the last 8 years, I haven't, because my last dog met an unfortunate death, and he was such a beautiful animal. At one point, well, I'm going to go back to 1973. I had a beautiful St. Bernard dog, and his name was Caesar. And since then, I've had 5 Caesars, 5 dogs, all St. Bernard. So Caesar 1, Caesar 2, up to Caesar 5. And Caesar 5, I happen to have a picture of him. This is my beautiful Caesar 5. Can you see that? Okay. Well, this poor Caesar died unexpectedly, and it just broke my heart. And so I haven't had another dog since. I'm thinking of having one. But, you know, at one point, I had a St. Bernard, I had a Mastiff, whose name was Winston, and I had a Labrador Retriever, whose name was Billy Boy, and I had the 3 of them, and we actually had a I can't think of a Great Dane at the same time. So we had the 4 of them. They were just beautiful dogs, and they'd run around on the property, and they were just wonderful. And I had such wonderful experiences with them. But my basic dog was the St. Bernard, and I love the Labrador Retriever. And right now, because it broke my heart when Caesar 5 died, you know, this poor dog. So I'm going to tell you the story about Caesar 1. Caesar 1 was sired by a national champion named Yankee Trader. And he was beautiful, and he was big, and he was 200 pounds. He was big, and one of the neighbors complained to the police that Caesar, it was an unfounded allegation that Caesar was on her property or some crazy thing. And the chief of police, who was a friend and friendly to me, came down to my house to tell me that a complaint had been registered against my dog. And he drove down the driveway, and he had a bullhorn, and he says, "Frank Caprio, come down here, I want to talk to you." And Caesar was outside looking at him menacingly. And so the chief tells me the story, and he gives me this long story. He says, "You got to do something about your dog, because the neighbor complained, you know, and Frank, you know, we're friends, but you have to do something about this dog." So now this is a gospel true story. So I said, "Chief, 1 minute, please." So whenever I would come home in the evening, I'd give Caesar a signal. I do this. And when I did this, Caesar would jump up on me and put both of his paws on my shoulders, right? So I went off to the side, and I said, "Caesar." And he jumped on me, put both of his paws up to my shoulders, and his head was right here. So I'm holding his head like this. Police car is there. And Caesar's up. I said, "Okay." Caesar jumps down. I went over to the police cruiser. I said, "Chief, I just asked him if he did it. He said it wasn't him." And the chief didn't see any humor in it. He said, "You SOB, you keep that dog quiet." I said, "He's not doing anything wrong." But I was very protective of my dogs. I love animals, and I don't know. I may surprise the family one of these days and come home with a new one. At any rate, thank you for the question. Okay. Dante Rodriguez from New York. Now, Dante, be careful when you ask a question, because you may get the wrong answer. Dante wants to know, what is your favorite sports team? And I must confess, that the Boston Red Sox are my favorite sports team. You know, that's professional sports. And in college sports, my favorite sports team is Providence College. Of course, I'm an alumnus of Providence College, and I'm a big fan of, I've had season tickets for Providence College basketball games forever. But my favorite professional sport team is the Boston Red Sox. I remember my dad in his 1931 Chevrolet, we would drive up to Fenway Park, and I have such fond memories. You know, it was almost like going to a shrine. Fenway Park was held in such high esteem, still is. And I remember the 1946 Red Sox. You know, they had Ted Williams and Bobby Dorr and Dominic DiMaggio and Al Zarella, and they had some great pitchers, Bertie Tebbetts, you know, and I'm getting very nostalgic now that I'm thinking of this. So, at any rate, Dante, if I were to ask you who your favorite sports team is, I think you might say the New York Yankees. It's a great rivalry, but I will say this. I had the high honor last baseball season of throwing out the first pitch at a Yankee-Red Sox game at Fenway Park. And in that game, the Red Sox beat the Yankees 19-3. So, I don't think that's sitting too favorably with you. So, before wrapping it up, I just want to say to everyone, take care of yourself. I want to say two things. I appreciate your support so very much. It really is an affirmation of how I treat people and and the respect that I try to afford to people. So thank you so very much. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Right? Until we meet again, God love you.